Once upon a time, in a small village in Italy, lived two girls named Eleonora and Flora. They were said to be soulmates since the moment they were born. They arrived on this earth but hours of one another, one at the rise of the sun and the other at the rise of the moon. Polar opposites in likeness and in nature, Flora had sun-kissed skin and hair as golden as the sun, and Eleonora had skin as pale as the moon and hair as dark as night. With personalities to match their description, Flora was bright and cheery, and Eleonora was mysterious and kind. Their houses were separate from each other, yet connected by a pathway leading to the edge of the woods, where they spent most of their time together. They played games fueled by imagination, wrote plays, sang songs, and danced under the moonlight. However, both of their mothers always warned them to never pass the river that leads to the deep part of the woods, as one never knows what kind of magical creatures and dangers lie inside. Eleonora and Flora followed this rule until one fateful night on their 9th birthday when they decided to play a game of fairies. They gallivanted through the edge of the woods until they reached the river. Eleonora stopped upon impulse, yet without thinking, Flora leaped across the stone pathway to the other side of the river. Eleonora yelled to her companion, yet Flora could not seem to hear her, so Eleonora crossed the river as well. As she stepped upon the meadowy surface of the other side of the river, she spotted Flora yards away gazing upon a circle of mushrooms. Eleonora called to Flora, yet once again, Flora did not seem to hear her. Her eyes were glassy, almost as if she were under a trance. At this sight, Eleonora began running to her friend, but not before Flora began running around the circle of mushrooms. Eleonora counted her companion run 9 laps that night, no more, no less. And as Eleonora finally caught up to her soulmate, and Flora reached upon her 9th lap, Flora vanished. A decade now passed, and Eleonora still had no sight of her companion. She often thinks of this night, however, how nobody in her village believed her story, and how they continued on with their lives as if she had not lost a love of her own. Eleonora and Flora both became lost legends of this village, as even though Eleonora still lived among them, she kept to herself in her quiet cottage near the edge of the woods. Nobody knew for sure what Eleonora did there, but they couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Eleonora did not feel sorry, however, as from this point on she dedicated her life to understanding and practicing white witchcraft and magical creatures, most prominently fairies. After 9 years of mastering her magical capabilities, she decided it was time to accomplish what she had been preparing for half of her life. On the night of her 18th birthday, under the light of a full moon, Eleonora gallivanted through the edge of the woods, just as she had done all those years ago, until she stumbled upon the river with creatures unknown. Her mind was racing with thoughts of doubt, yet at the step of her first stone, her mind became clear of worry and doubt, as the only thing crossing her mind was Flora. Throughout her 9 years of research, Eleonora learned that what she saw that night, the circle of mushrooms Flora vanished into, is called a fairy circle, the only portal humans and fairies have to each other's realms. Fairies have access to the human realm whenever they please. However, for humans, it's a bit more difficult to enter the fairy realm. Fairies like to keep their distance from humans, unless the humans are destined to become fairies themselves. So in order to keep humans away from this portal, they would place a trick on any human that placed in the circle, that stopped into the circle without performing the sacred Northumberland ritual of running around the circle 9 times, no more, no less. And if you failed to do so, one would be forced to dance with the fairies until the day one dies, or at least until one goes mad. With this in mind, upon reaching the fairy circle that took her soulmate so long ago, she was careful to run along the edge of the circle exactly 9 times, no more, no less. As she stepped into the portal upon her 9th lap, Eleonora vanished out of the human realm and into the fairy realm. The world as she knew it began spinning around Eleonora, so much so that she clenched her eyes shut out of fear. When the world began to settle down at her feet, she opened her eyes only to see a world so different yet so similar to her own. She saw houses made of mushrooms, pathways made of gemstones, and ponds so clear and sparkly that one could use it as a mirror. Eleonora looked around at the countless fairies going about their daily lives, so busy with their own tasks at hand that they didn't even notice Eleonora. They looked like humans, yet had wings on their backs bigger than their entire bodies, each different from the last. Eleonora walked into this fairy town, still somewhat discombobulated from not having adjusted to this new realm, while still keeping careful not to be seen. Even in this new and unknown reality, her mind stayed focused on one thing only: Flora. She wandered around aimlessly, yet with intent, until she spotted a woman with sun-kissed skin, golden blonde hair, and glittering golden wings so big that they touched the floor when she walked. Even though she looked older than she had before the incident, and she was now obviously a fairy, Eleonora felt in her heart that this fairy her eyes gazed upon was none other than her truest love, Flora. Sensing someone peering over at her, Flora turned around to see someone she had often thought of yet never thought she'd see in this reality. With jet black hair, translucent skin, and a slightly older face, Flora knew she had been reunited with her soulmate, Eleonora. The two girls ran to each other, teary-eyed and giddy, simply looking into each other's souls. Finally, breaking the silence,
My Eleonora, I never thought I'd live to see the day I witnessed you here in this room. What are you doing here?
My Flora, I've been studying magic and witchcraft and fairies in hopes of finding you again. Tell me, what has become of you? I see you have the most beautiful wings.
Yes. Well, when I arrived in this new reality, I wandered around aimlessly for quite some time. I mostly allowed my intuition to guide me, and eventually I stumbled upon a very old-looking building inside of the hollow of a tree. I stepped inside and found 3 fairies that looked rather stunned at the sight of me. Eventually, the eldest one, named Ezra, told me that I either had to become a fairy or dance with them until the end of my mortal life. Obviously, I chose to become a fairy, but I truly miss my life as a human, and most importantly, you. Which reminds me, we have to get out of here before they find you, or else they will make you do the same, or worse.
Eleonora and Flora walked together hand in hand, now protected by the dark of night, recounting to one another tales of their adventurous lives. Eventually, they reached a quaint house made of an acorn with an amethyst passageway and a small garden next to it. They made their way inside and sat down on a cozy couch warmed by the heat of a lit fireplace.
You know, Eleonora, I often came to visit you in your reality. Undeniably, you can see me, but I have seen how much power you hold within your being. And that power is even greater here. It is severely looked down upon for a human to be here if you're not planning on becoming a fairy. And even though I am content with the life I lead here, I don't wish for you to suffer the same fate as I.
Can't I take you back with me?
I'm afraid it's a bit more difficult than that. You see, time works differently here than in the mortal realm. Our days here are equivalent to even months over there. My life would reach its ending if I were to go back and now as a human.
Then I should become a fairy too. That way we can be together.
I could not ask you to make this decision so hastily. Why don't we give it a day? I can show you around. And at the end of the day, we can go to the console and ask them to turn you into a fairy if you so please. Nobody would question it if you're planning on becoming a fairy. Please, don't give anyone your name. If you give a fairy your name, or you're still human, they will have complete power over you, especially with your powers. That would be disastrous.
Okay, I think I understand. And so, Eleonora and Flora spent the night dreaming aside one another until the rise of the sun, at which time they began their day. They gallivanted through this new reality alongside one another, reminiscent of the pretend game of fairies they would always play together, except this time it was real. Flora showed Eleonora what it truly means to be a fairy, including the many jobs they offer to protect Mother Nature, the hobbies they occupied their time with, and they even met some of Flora's friends, while keeping careful not to give any of them Eleonora's name, of course. Eleonora felt right at home, talking to Flora's friends, feeling the energy around her, and practicing some of her magic that was most evidently heightened in this new realm. Nighttime once again reigned over the sky, when Eleonora said, "This entire day, being here with you, meeting your wonderful friends, has made me realize that I truly want to become a fairy. Not only because you're here, though that is a bonus, but also because I feel as though I belong here, like I'm meant to be here, you know?
Eleanor, you have no idea how happy you made me just now. Let's go to the concert right now, and they can sort it out for us.
They went to the hollow tree and stepped inside to witness the same fairies that gave Flora her ultimatum so long ago.
Flora, what brings you here?
Said Ezra, the eldest fairy.
Hello, Elder Ezra. I have brought here my dearest love, and she wishes to become a fairy. She has a great magic within her and will make her a marvelous fairy.
I see. Well, luckily she wishes to become a fairy or else, my dear. We would have to punish you too. You say she has great magic within her?
I believe she does.
And what is your name, my dear?
My name is Eleanor. Wait!
No, Eleonora! Please, Ezra. She didn't mean to give you her name. It was clearly an accident. She wishes to become a fairy. Please don't take her away from me.
Oh, how I wish you didn't say your name, my dear. In all honesty, I didn't even mean to ask you. But either way, I'm afraid rules are rules for an Eleonora. I have no control over this. The fairies have power over Eleonora now. And since she is no longer becoming a fairy, you must now be punished for hiding her. I'm afraid you must suffer the other option I gave you all of those years ago. You must dance until you go mad.
Almost instantaneously, Eleanor was put into a dreamlike trance, forced to fulfill any magical wish the fairy so desired, and Flora's feet began to move through no control of her own. The two star-crossed lovers never met again and only saw each other in their dreams until their demise. They died but hours of one another, almost 200 years later. Eleanor, with translucent skin and hair as dark as night, perished at the rise of the sun. Flora, with sun-kissed skin and hair as golden as the sun, perished at the rise of the moon, thus completing one another for the last time. The end.